Just before noon, on December 13, 1982, the Yemen Arab Republic was hit by an earthquake, 6 on the Richter scale. "2,000 men, women and children were killed, and thousands were wounded. 60,000 houses were destroyed or severely damaged. International aid programs were set up. Plans were made for the reconstruction of houses and the building of new ones. The government of the Yemen Arab Republic established a special organization that was to coordinate and supervise all activities, the Supreme Council for Reconstruction, with the Executive Office for Reconstruction, the EOR, as the executive body. The region around Zmar in the Central Highlands was to be the area for the activities. Building projects were hurriedly set in motion by various foreign aid programs. The result was the construction of 15,000 houses that were not adapted to the Yemeni way of life and culture. Most of these houses are still unoccupied. People don't want to live in them as they stand. Mountains and valleys, plateaus and deserts. This is the landscape where the people live. The Yemen Arab Republic is a country with a rich tradition and an ancient culture in which building one's own house has an important place. There's a reason for the location of houses and villages in the landscape. People leave all fertile land free for cultivation and choose slopes and hilltops for easy protection. Houses are built from local materials, pieces of rock, sand and wood, built with help of the family, neighbors and friends. The geography and fitting up of the house and its immediate surroundings is conditioned by tradition and culture. But Yemen lies on a line of fracture in the Earth's crust. There's always a danger of an earthquake. There was one aid program that took all these aspects into account. The Zmar Aided Self-Help Reconstruction Project, DASH. The DASH project is financed by the Dutch Ministry of Development Cooperation in collaboration with the Yemen Arab Republic, USAID and the European Community. The execution is in the hands of DHV consulting engineers and the EOR. The major aims of the DASH project are earthquake-resistant houses, traditional architecture, the use of local building materials, and building one's own house. The number of houses to be built, 1,000. Some 60,000 houses were destroyed by the earthquake. People have lived and are still living in temporary housing, waiting for a new home. The victims received a compensation from the government. The money enabled them to co-finance the building of a new house. Agreements as to who should do and pay what were laid down in a contract. The Dash project provides knowledge, management, logistics, and certain building materials such as joists, plywood, and frames. The beneficiaries provide the unskilled labor, stones, and transport. The Central Logistic Distribution and Training Center was built in ذمار.
At window level, we reach a critical building stage. Windows and doors interrupt the overall cohesion. All walls must now be held together with a tie beam.
The training of foremen, masons, and resident engineers comprise an important part of the Dash project.
Instead, a cheap and simple solution is developed. U-shaped cement blocks, which can be used throughout the building process. The mold is locally made and easily operated.
In the region, 5 building advice centers were built. In Watan, Dubach, Villach, Al-Jumach, and Medinat Ashak. The building advice centers have technical advisors at their disposal. Administrative support and training possibilities are available. Stocks of building materials are also kept in these centers. The region is poorly accessible, and there are enormous transport problems, so that it is useful to have a stock of essential building materials in the field. There are not many real roads inland. Often, one must follow the wadi, a dry riverbed. Sometimes, routes may become impassable from one day to the next after heavy rainfall or landslides. Detours taking hours are often the result. Water, stones, cement and wood are needed for the building work. Water must be fetched from a well and sometimes carried over long distances. It's usually women's work. There are enough stones in this rocky part of Yemen. A stone quarry is naturally sought as close as possible to the site of the house. The stones are brought out of the rock face. Sometimes it's necessary to use dynamite. Eventually, all the raw materials are assembled at the building site. To get the shape of the stones right, stonemasons with years of experience are hired. They shape the stones by hand with a practiced eye. The dash house is ready for habitation. In the Yemen Arab Republic, it is customary to hold a cut session after a day's work. Chewing on leaves that have a stimulating effect, the men discuss the major events of the day and consider the progress of the building process. The cut session is an indispensable socializing event, and therefore the ideal place to exchange knowledge and experience with the self-building of earthquake-resistant houses. The incandescent effect of the DASH project, example is better than precept, is an important side effect and a point scored for the future, a safer future. The dash houses satisfy the requirements made by the population of this region. Account has clearly been taken of their style of life and dwelling. Extension of the house, either upwards or sideways, is possible. A kitchen can be built on, for instance, or the house can be provided with a second story if married children move in to live. The DASH project provides 1,000 houses in an earthquake-prone area. As a result, 1,000 families have safe accommodation. But it is also of importance to achieve a coherent policy in house building so that in the future more use will be made of the knowledge about the construction of earthquake-resistant houses. This knowledge has to become part of the training of architects and engineers. It has to be included in building regulations, and more research has yet to be done on the use of local building materials. A safe house in Yemen need not be an exception.